Mr. Madhusudan, please describe VectorSpot.
Well, we are a company that is focused on helping companies accelerate their growth through inorganic means, which is through acquiring companies, entering new markets, and so the essence is on looking at non-traditional ways of growth and helping companies basically go through those transactions in a seamless fashion.
What prompted you to develop this company?
Well, if you look at what's happening in the world today, there is a tremendous amount of falling of borders. So we are increasingly in a borderless world, and most growth strategies involve going into new markets or getting acquirers from new markets or getting into acquisitions into new markets. And that's become increasingly the trend as we've seen over these years. And my own sense is that that's going to increase dramatically. But the moment you go across borders, it poses all kinds of new challenges. Challenges with respect to cultural aspects of doing business, challenges in terms of labor laws, challenges in terms of market behavior. And unless there is somebody who can help you understand what happens in a market you're not used to, you can make expensive mistakes. And that's really where I thought I should bring in some of my real life experiences in having operated businesses in multiple countries, or in having done acquisitions, in having done integration in multiple countries, bring that experience so that it can be of use to companies that want to cross borders, want to invest in other markets, or be acquired or acquire. That's really what I'm trying to do, to bring in the operational experience, the deal experience, and the experience of having worked in multiple markets.
Tell us a little bit about your background and your business experience.
Well, I started my career in India. I went to a business school there, the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad, and then got on to my career in corporate planning. And then I soon moved into information technology, and I used to run NIIT's operations in a city called Bangalore, and followed it up by turning around NIIT's operations in Bombay, which is now called Mumbai. And that is NIIT's largest flagship operation at that time. And then I moved into setting up several of the infrastructure groups at NIIT, corporate planning, information systems, and human resources. So that gave me a good breadth in terms of experience, in terms of having done different parts of looking at different parts of the operations of the company. And when in '91, when India was in a very, very export-hungry mode because of the foreign exchange situation in the market, I came to the US to set up NIIT's operations in the US. And here, of course, all of the skills that I had picked up in terms of operations, in terms of setting up several of the staff functions, came in very handy. And I was able to bootstrap that operation and get started here in the United States. I launched a few businesses for NIIT here, including the computer-based training, which is now e-learning, the software services business. And over a period of time, as growth started to increase, the key question for us was, how do you keep that growth engine going? And lo and behold was acquisitions. And so I moved from operations into acquisitions to look at keeping the growth engine going through acquisitions. And in the US market, of course, we've done several acquisitions, several strategic investments. And added to that, we also looked at Europe as a market and did a couple of acquisitions there.
How does the climate in the business climate in 2008 for mergers and acquisitions compared to earlier in the 90s?
I think it's a stark difference. In the 90s, I think first of all, we were still, India was a very constrained economy, and cross-border transactions were extremely rare. The whole country was in what was called a permit Raj, which meant that to sneeze you needed permission. And it was just impossible to think of doing different kinds of businesses at that time. That was in the early 90s. sometime during the mid-90s, everything changed in India. So there was the liberalization and the economy opened up, and that really propelled a tremendous amount of growth. So through the 90s, we saw a relaxation of several of the permits and the licenses required. It just became easier to do business. And as the markets changed and the market stabilized, the pace of economic growth in India really took off. And in the last few years, we've seen tremendous consistent growth. And what that has led to is that Indian companies have been able to, one, improve their balance sheets very, very significantly. Their cash reserves are very strong. Their global ambitions are very strong. And today they are going out into the marketplace and saying, okay, to execute on a growth strategy and become a world leader, we should be looking at acquiring brands, acquiring businesses that will, hold us in good stead. And we've seen several of those acquisitions. So I think that's really the stark difference between the 90s and the current, last few years. The pace of inorganic growth from Indian companies has been very, very significant. And it looks to me that that trend is here to stay.
How can you help these Indian companies find partners or acquisitions in the United States?
Well, what is just being here in this market for the last 16 years, I have a fairly good familiarity with the marketplace. And in terms of who the players are, in terms of what they do, what they look for. And I think that initial piece of positioning companies is very critical. And that's something that I would consider as a strength. And that's really the starting point of any detailed discussion. So I see that as a very important part in terms of being able to project a company well, in terms of being able to assess what the synergies would be and what the benefits of such an acquisition would be. I think that would be an important part.
How about in terms of U.S. companies? Do you think that they will be interested in Indian partners?
Yeah, I think there's tremendous amount of awareness that India is a huge market and a very attractive one. The propensity of the customer to be able to pay for and buy expensive goods is now become legendary. So every brand wants a presence in India. And some of them will do it the small and slow and steady way, which is to open an office and then expand. But there are several others who want a presence, an existing presence, which they want to acquire. So we are seeing a tremendous amount of inflow of US interests into the Indian market, primarily to get a foothold in the Indian market through an acquisition. We've seen that with software companies, we've seen that with hardware companies, we've seen that with a variety of other companies as well.